Hey, welcome. I'm sorry, a little
Welcome.
bit of a weird reaction from me, but apparently I cannot hear any audio beyond what you're saying over here. I can hear me. I can hear Robert. I apparently can't hear anything we've inserted into it. So therefore, luckily, I actually had the video to watch. So here we are. Divide or united we stand every time. United we stand, divided we podcast. I'm Lionel in Toronto. I almost forgot my own name.
And
And
I'm
Robert, of
Robert
course.
in
Yeah.
Nashville.
All right. You know what? Before I screw anything else up, I'm going to go through a couple of little items. Every week there's something going on, news, especially tech related, and we love our tech stuff. And man, you're going to find out a lot more about that in the coming weeks. And by the way, before we go any further, if it hasn't been mentioned or not mentioned enough, Robert does have a gaming channel. You should really check it out. Robert, what's the name of your channel again?
Xphil_Graves X.
Right. Excellent. Oh, wait. What's the name of it, though?
Oh, sorry. Midlife Mayhem Gaming, because
Excellent.
I'm in my midlife crisis.
Midlife. Right. Yeah. Okay. Definitely check it out. We'll mention a little later on, types of games he plays and what he does and everything. But it's a lot of fun. I play some of the games with him, and some of the ones he does single player stuff. And it's actually a lot of fun to see it. I should talk about that off air in one of the ones I watched you do yesterday. I thought was really funny. But anyways, we'll get on with that. For now, let's talk about some of this stuff. So some of the things I've seen in the last few days are not working on my phone. So why not have more things go wrong? Here it is. All right. This is from where I read this, and I'm gonna cite all of these when I do this because I want to make sure that we're not stealing somebody's stuff here. We're not. What's the word? I can't remember. I used to call it skimming when you did it with newspaper, but in the internet, what's the term when you basically take somebody's article and just repost it as your own? It's a bad thing. Don't do it. Um,
Stealing?
well, yeah, that's very true. Well, hopefully everything's going fine because again, I'm having a few issues. So if I'm getting jittery and laggy, uh, well, hopefully not. And if it is, I have to fix that somehow. Anyways, okay. Find My Device trackers will automatically activate network on your device. This again, according to 95 Google. So I'll just read a couple of lines of this quick. Google's Find My Device network has. Oh no, I don't need to read that part. Sorry. It says, "quote My colleague Ben Shun recently detailed the process of adding a supported tracker to your account. The guide is great if you already have a Find My Device network activated in your account. However, I was a little annoyed that I had received some trackers, but still no Find My Device access. Even so, I decided to maybe try and set his Chipolo, is what he's saying, tracker before heading off for a long weekend, he says, without Find My Device network activated. Apparently, it automatically will activate it if you're within the window of it's going to be activated, is what my assumption is here. For instance, I just received the email yesterday and it says in 3 days. So I expect it to actually be operational not tomorrow, but the next day for me. However, if I had pre-ordered one of these new trackers, it would, as soon as I pair it, should automatically kick it into gear because it's not useless if it's not working, but apparently since it's technically already available, it sort of kicks the system in. So that's basically it.
Interesting.
So you could search that information 9 to 5 Google for Find My Device tracker automatically activate, and that will come up. Moving on a little bit. This is another one interesting. This one is actually from Android Authority. And again, this information can be available in other places. This is just kind of where I've seen it. And I also read a lot of these ones, as a lot of you do, I'm sure. Google Play Store quietly rolls out feature to uninstall apps remotely. And I checked. I do not have this on my phone yet, but what this really does mean is that you will be able to actually say use your Galaxy. What do you have? An S23 Ultra?
Yeah.
You could use your S23 Ultra to uninstall from your S22 Ultra if you still have your S22 Ultra and you were using it, even if you're only using it for Wi-Fi at home. So you wouldn't have to like, oh, I don't want this app, and then uninstall it on that, uninstall it on this, uninstall it on your 2 tablets or whatever. You could just do it off one device, and as long as they're all Android devices and have the Play Store, and that's where the app came from, Bob's your uncle. So that shouldn't take too long. That's the kind of rollout that we usually see within a few weeks or less. It might even only be a few days.
Yeah, because that's all server side stuff, so it's not anything that's device related.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you can do it on your device, but the actual change is back in.
Well, server side things usually take longer, but for this particular stuff, because it's server side to that particular app rather than the system, it is actually generally quicker. App Store updates usually only a few days to maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks. Whereas sometimes they say, oh, an app's going to get an update, but it's a server side update. And there's people saying a month and a half later, I don't have it yet. How come you have it? Right. Okay, so let's move on. I believe you wanted to tell us about one other thing from Google, another new product.
So it's the article I sent you about the Google is coming out with a new watch for kids, and it is called the Fitbit Ace LTE. And if everyone remembers, Google purchased Fitbit some time back, and they've been slowly incorporating that whole ecosystem and stuff into their existing network of devices. And so this actually, when I first saw it, I was like, that's actually pretty cool, because being LTE, it gives you the ability of, staying on top of where your kids are, because I'm sure you're going to be able to, they're going to probably be part of that Find My Device stuff, I would imagine, right?
Well, think. Yeah, we'll go here, but it is Wear OS, so it's absolutely zero reason why it wouldn't be, because it's Wear OS. So,
and I assume it's like they can do with the other Google products. They would be able to, have a child's account assigned to it as opposed to an adult type account. I don't have any kids. I know you don't have any small kids, so I don't really know what the process is on that. Well, but I thought this was pretty cool in that it gives you the ability of calling certain people. You can call them. You can know where they're at, what's going on. And I see that as a really huge plus.
I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. There are a couple of little things that and again, if this was Samsung or Oppo, and certainly if it were Apple, I would actually see a big benefit. Now, there was a couple of things I was going to mention, but I just noticed something in the article. I noticed for some reason. I skimmed over it originally when you sent it to me. But it specifically states that it's protected by Gorilla Glass. That's not going to do very much, is it?
Is that like at a zoo?
Gorilla Glass 3. Now, Gorilla Glass 3, it's not like it's terrible, right? I mean, it's don't worry. But if you know anything about, like, kids, these are children, and you're not giving this to a 14 or 15, I guarantee you, because they want their Apple Watch, or maybe their Samsung, or possibly, if they're really serious tech family, maybe a Google Watch.
Yeah.
And if they break it, well, you know what? You got to mow a lot of lawns and get another one yourself, right?
Right.
But or take out more garbage, whatever, right? But we're talking about them giving these watches to like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. Maybe not even 12. 12, they're already probably getting Apple Watches. A lot of families are doing that already, giving their kids Apple Watches for that very same reason, for safety. I don't disagree with that. You see, when cell phones, people first started giving their kids cell phones, the first thing people were thinking is, no, it's a bad idea. I said, it's not really a bad idea. I said, I wouldn't give a kid under 13 a cell phone, though.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being was because they cost almost as much as they do today, back then, before the prices started coming down. And kids, would lose them, or they get stolen easy. And they weren't digital. There was no protection. You stole the phone. Anyone could use it. Period. It was it. Done. Right. But now it's different, right? So you got to the point where it is definitely a safety thing. And so you want any kid that is capable of understanding what they have in their pocket or what they have on their wrist. Right. Is not just for their fun, but it's to make sure that they know that they can use it to get out of trouble. and that they need to use it if they're in trouble. And you teach them that. And then you
Right.
parent them and you make sure that you monitor the hell out of it and don't put TikTok on their stuff. Sorry.
Right.
That's a rant for another time, but we're going to get to that. We are going to get to that. But nonetheless, see, my kid would not be using TikTok. I can tell you that if I had a school age child, they would not be using TikTok.
Well,
Anyway,
they might not have a chance before long.
yeah, and again, we'll get to that.
Goes.
We will get to that again. We brought it up briefly last week. We're gonna have another thing has popped up, and we're gonna see how that's gonna have a huge effect too. Well, not a huge, but it will have an effect.
Yeah.
So, anyways, there's that, and well, that's basically one of the main things. Actually, is that I don't really think because of the shape of it. Although it's not round like the Pixel Watch, it has corners, which makes it a little bit stronger, in my opinion. But it's got those rounded edges, and they're not protected. At least not in the pictures I saw, unless I looked at it wrong. What I saw was exposed rounded edges on a watch meant for children, glass. What are you thinking? Google.
Yes, but if you kind of look at the article, though, they do have some, banned like cases.
Yeah. But
so
why even make it like that and then say, so you know what, just make it like that automatically and then sell it to either that or raise the price and add that in automatically so you make sure that they use it. Because I guarantee
you might have some older kids though they're going to use that don't necessarily need the band than some of the younger kids.
What older kids are going to use this?
Well,
it's a cool
when I say
thing,
older kids, I don't mean teenagers. I mean like 7, 8, 9, 10. They might not necessarily need the protection band.
Here's where I think that this is the absolute best scenario for but the best case for these watches. And I really hope that Apple follows suit with a very inexpensive Apple Watch just for kids for the same reason. And that is especially special needs kids. And it's not just because you might have one that wanders out the door, but they might just be getting off the bus from school and decide to go 2 doors down to visit their friend.
Right.
And you don't know where they are. Now, you know they're safe because you've got the app, right? You can set a time. You could probably, and if you can't do it, you could probably get an app. Or you could pay somebody to make an app anyway, because this is Android, right? That would actually say if they're not home by this time, if they're not in this time zone at this point, I want an alarm, and then I'm going to track them.
Right.
I mean, I can honestly tell you, I have had experience with why is she not home yet? Or I'm sorry, actually, for me, it was the school saying, "Where is she?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? She was on the school bus." I don't want to get into this because I'll start crying. Long story short, safe, wrong school bus was at the corner.
Yeah.
But for 2.5 hours,
resolves that whole problem.
It does, because I would have got a notification. And even if I didn't get a notification, I could have just tracked it and I could have said, okay, I'll tell you where she is. And then you call that school bus and tell them to turn the hell around right now. So that's a scary situation. And there's parents that go through stuff like that, unfortunately, all the time. But this is something that's safer. And the fact that it's LTE and not just Wi-Fi means you can track them. As long as they're in a cellular network area, they are trackable. And if it does work on the Find My device, that means even if something went wrong with the watch, as long as there's some battery power and even without the cell signal and without Wi-Fi, if it's anywhere near any other Android devices that are at least a certain age old, in other words, not very old, then it will still be able to track it on the Find My Device network. So I love the idea. I do wish they would make it a little bit more robust for obvious reasons, but I think the idea is great. But when I say I wish they would, I mean for other people's sake. Obviously, again, like you said, I don't have any school age kids, so it's not a thing for me.
And another thing I like too is they made the LTE data very affordable. It's an unlimited amount of data, and it's I'm sure this will change, but it's $60 a year.
Wait a minute, $60 a year, unlimited LTE data to pay to who? I mean, wouldn't this matter as to where you connect it? Like if it's connected to Rogers in Canada, it's like $7,000 a second. I'm slightly
I don't know.
exaggerating.
It just says the ACE Pass LTE data unlimited fun, and it says
Yeah, I should have read that.
$59.98 annually. Buy an annual Fitbit Ace Pass to get 50% off. Plus, you get a band. Blah blah blah. But I mean, even at monthly is like $10 a month. That's the going rate for any kind of, you know, Verizon. I don't know about Rogers rates and stuff like that in the
Yeah, yeah,
Canada
yeah.
region, but
I do like that it technically it has a bigger battery than the Pixel Watch, which is not a big surprise, by the way.
yeah,
This is a big shock. The world has come to its knees now. No, but it says 16 plus hours versus the Pixel Watch 24 hours. But here's the thing: that 16 plus hours is with gaming LTE always on display. Oh, it says off. Only 16 hours. But you know what? Here's the thing. That should be good because as a parent, you need to be checking everything to do with your children, including their watch. Up to a certain age or under a certain age, you should be the one as a parent or guardian who should be making sure that watch is charged so that first thing in the morning when you send them off to school, it's working. Right.
yeah. Because you're not gonna have some 8-year-old like, oh, I better charge my watch tonight.
Well, yeah. Well, some will. Some are smart.
Well,
Some take,
but I think the majority is
the
not,
average
yeah.
the average 8-year-old, you really should. I mean, like don't get me wrong, there when I was 8 I was setting my own alarm for school, but it wasn't because I always knew. It was because I was reminded to do so, right? So it's
Yeah.
basically that. I mean, the parents don't have to technically physically go in and take the watch off the kid's wrist and put it on the charger. They simply need to say, remember to charge your watch. It better be charged in the morning or you're going to be late for school. I mean, you're not going to do that,
Right.
but still. Anyways, let's move on. That's an interesting one.
And one other quick point though about the charging thing. If it's like any of these other watches, you're gonna get a full charge in 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Oh
So,
no, it says right on there. Actually, there's a part in the list.
I didn't see the charging.
Yeah,
time.
it says 30 minutes to
Okay.
60%.
Okay. Yeah. So
why
less
does
than an
it-
hour, you'll be
and
able to
and
get
they're
full
saying that would
charge.
give you about 11 hours of usage. And that's
Yeah.
probably an average hour, I guess, or maybe it's with everything off. I don't know. 70 minutes to 100%. So it's about the same as an average Pixel watch or a Galaxy watch from 4 years ago. So that's shots fired again, right? No offense, Google, but I mean, I'm a Google fanboy. Okay, but we'll get into that. Apple. It's oh, sorry, I got to mention again. This one's from Android Police, which has, by the way, traditionally been one of my absolute favorite tech websites and news sources.
It's been a go-to for me.
To this day. But I admit, I do wish that before they would spout off certain things, they would actually say, this is an opinion, or this is a piece, or this is only this particular, right? Just once in a while. Because there's a certain one that starts with a V that used to do that all the time. And it took a long time before they finally reverted because they were getting a lot of flack for seeming like Apple fanboys. Started with a V, won't mention any names. Anyways, but I do read them a lot more now. They seem to be a lot more fair in the last few years. Okay, anyway, so from Android Police, I was going to say Apple Police. I love it. Apple could give iPhones their own version of Material You. Says more built-in app customization features are down the road for iOS. So without going into the whole thing, because I think you should honestly, when you're not watching this, go and Google some of these things we're talking about. That's why I'm citing where they're coming from. And go check it out, read it for yourself, watch their YouTube videos if they have one. I wouldn't doubt if Android Police made a video on this one. Apple's compliance with the EU's DMA rules has forced the company to take an Android-like approach in the EU and allow for practices previously against its statute. It's what they're saying. So basically what I read earlier, and I can't remember where, so I can't cite it, is basically that they're going to allow some customizations on the home screen, allowing you to move your apps around and change positions. It doesn't quite state whether, and I don't think anybody knows this yet, at least outside of Apple, as to whether you'll be able to actually move them around. So you want to have 3 here and 4 here, like you can on Android. Uh, but even being able to move them around or have less on the home screen and start a different page is a huge leap forward for Apple, and the absolute
Yeah.
massive biggest reason that I have never wanted to go back to Apple ever since leaving. 16 years ago, I want to say I had the
Yeah.
I had the second iPhone. This technically the third. I think I had a 3G, I think. Yeah, I had the 3G, so it was technically
Yeah.
the third one.
3G.
Yeah, I think that was the first one that was available in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
The first one
Interesting.
wasn't, and I don't remember if the second one was or not, which was the 3, but not 3G. I had the
Right.
3G. The reason I know is because I remember thinking, "Oh my god, I can't believe I got 3G." I've got my map going on the highway. I was
That's
the
like
dots
dial
move,
up.
the
Nice.
dots moving, right? I was so proud of it. I would look down for a second, right, and I'd see my phone mounted on there, and I'd look down, and I'd go, "The dot's here," and I look down again and see the dot jump forward. I'm like, "Yeah, that's incredible." Right, now you can get animations as it moves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Virtual walking directions and everything.
Yeah.
It's a little different now, but so I don't know. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good idea? Well, of course you think it's a good idea, but I like it for competition because while Android worldwide is always going to be bigger, just because it's worldwide, you can buy it anywhere. And there's cheaper versions of phones and really good, expensive.
When it's open source, and of course
it's
a
open
good idea
source.
because
Yeah.
that's one thing that I don't have any issue with Apple product as far as hardware. I think they make fantastic hardware. I really do.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I have
But
an iPad.
I don't like their restrictive ecosystem. I don't like it.
Hate it. Hate it.
You can have security, but still give customization capabilities to the end
Yeah.
user who's buying the device. Instead of telling them, you're going to give me $1,500, but you can't do anything you want except use the phone the way we tell you to use it.
Yeah,
I can do
absolutely.
anything I want with my Android for the most part. But it's still encrypted. It still has security. So, there is a middle ground, and I just think that's kind of what turned me off to the whole situation. And like you said, the first time I got an iPhone, I'm like, wait a minute, I can't move my icons where I want them. It's just like this big massive clutter in the middle of my phone. What? No.
Wait, you had an iPhone?
No, my wife did.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to turn this off and block you.
Oh, right.
I'm
yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
I'm kidding.
No.
Okay, listen.
wife
I'll
did,
be
and
honest with you.
I've played with them here and there, but I've never used one on a daily.
All right. You know what? I want to say this. So if I were going to move to Europe next year, I'd consider, because it's going to be way more open. I mean, I could put third party apps on without having to jailbreak. I don't know why I did quotes, because that's
Yeah.
But when I did have an iPhone, of course, Android.
See, if I knew that, would have never been your.
When I got
if
my
I
first
would've known
iPhone,
that.
Android was basically a baby. Like, it literally, nobody had Android at the time. They were pretty much still almost a beta in their first couple of versions, with only like Motorola and a couple other companies even making any phones. I think they sold less than 1 million in the first year and a half or so. I don't know the numbers. Don't quote me. I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but obviously it was nothing, next to nothing, right? So a lot of us knew they existed, but didn't really pay attention or care. Whereas iPhone came out, it was like, oh my god, look at this bloody thing, right? So when I got mine, I already had the iPod Touch, so I was all in at this point, right? It was no problem for me to get the iPhone. But I remember within 3 months, not even, I think it was just a couple of months, I said, you know what? I got to jailbreak this bastard. Like, I was just right on top of it, right out of the gate. And here's the thing. I did not know anything about Android. And when I first found out about Android, I had no idea that you could, what we as Apple people at the time thought was jailbreaking, because they have to have the simplest terms for it. Sorry. It was like, wow, I can customize everything. I can do whatever I want. I can get into the system file. What? Are you kidding me? I fell in love. But it was a couple of a few years actually, before I actually got into the Android. And the first one I tried in the store, I said, no. The jank was so bad. I said, it's not ready. And I didn't want an iPhone again, because I hated the idea of this whole walled garden thing. And I didn't even have a smartphone yet, other than the one iPhone I had previously had. So I went.
Did you ever use a Windows phone?
Hang on. I went to a feature phone And I stayed with the feature phones for 3 years before finally, which version was it? Which one was Kit Kat? Because it wasn't Kit Kat, it was prior to that.
Lollipop?
Oh, it's before Lollipop, because I remember getting Lollipop.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Well, you know what? I'll just tell you. I had an HTC Magic, which of course was actually pretty much the non-keyboard version of the, what'd you call it? The G1 in the States? I can't remember the name of it though, but it was it was called the G1 in the States, and I think it was only, was it AT&T or Verizon, or I can't remember who did it.
I never had one of those. So I
I
know you're talking about, but I never had one.
Yeah, and they were good, relatively smooth for the most part, and it was the first one that was. But I mean, of course, the screen was tiny. They were already making bigger ones, but those bigger ones were a little janky. But it was due for an update immediately because it was already a year old. And then, of course, I got another phone in a year that was new, so I skipped a year, technically, in technology. And immediately, right after that, there was another update for another Android system, because they didn't do this like once a year like they do now because of the pixels, right? So you got, you'd have like Android 3 and then 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. And then all of a sudden it's 4, and then 4.1 and 4.2 3 weeks later. And then 4.4 6 months later. And then a month after that, Android 5. So it was like, I think a year and a half, there were 3 versions of Android at one point. And then we didn't get anything for a year and 12 months other than incremental. You remember what it was like then, right? Now it's literally because they have the full beta system that they work with. And Apple's been doing this for years now too. They do their betas, and you can test their betas. A lot of people don't realize that. You can. They do their public beta testing as well.
Yeah.
So,
but one thing that Google did that was to their benefit was they ripped out all their apps, so their apps are no longer part of the embedded OS, and they can update their apps separate from the operating system. It used to be that if you updated apps, that's why you had all these incremental updates, because they had no way of updating the app.
Exactly.
Now they can just push out one update to an app, here, this app, that app, this OS. So it makes it a lot easier to have,
and with things like Pixel, they've proven that you could do things like feature drops because of this. Which technically, while Samsung doesn't do feature drops, they do have updates a couple of times a year that add features or enhance features that they already have in exactly the same manner by just updating certain apps or services that allow apps to take advantage of it. And in addition to what you were talking about just now with the apps that were part of the core services, and they were separated out to be apps. And I should say it's unlike Apple, which all of their apps, all of their settings have to go through the system. Whereas Google, or Android rather, separates each individual app's own distinct settings. But then there are settings within the core system. And because of that, Android was able to make different core systems that they can, again, update separately from the actual operating system. So you get these periodic updates to Google Play services, as well as a few other things that allow you to actually have the updates in the app be a lot easier, where the update in the app could simply be one line of code that says, take advantage of this. Well, I mean, that's not what it's going to say, but that's basically the brunt of it, right? So, oh boy. All right. So moving on a little bit. I actually thought we went on with that a little bit more than I thought we were going to, but
well, I mean, it's a really popular topic, and in the beginning you were talking about being a fanboy, and
yeah,
again, I was a Pixel user for years and years and years and years, and we all know what sent me to Samsung. It's Google's fault. It's Google's fault. They had
absolutely
abysmal service, and they, from somebody who spent $1,000 a year every single year for God knows how many years, and then to do what they did, I'm just like, no, I'm not.
No, that's another thing. You don't want to go through all of that, and nobody deserves to. You spend all that money.
Yeah.
At the very least, you should get proper service, and I've heard lots of stories where people have had excellent service, but here's the thing: you need some consistency. If you're going to have some bad service with a few people, it literally needs to only be a few people where it's easily rectified. But if you've got 50% of the people saying, come on, you got to do something about that. That's the kind of thing when it happens to something like a cable company, everyone leaves. And the
Yeah, well,
other
they are.
competing cable company, exactly, right? But the other cable company, see, it's easy for a cable company to have a bad reputation, have a bunch of their people leave to the other cable company. And the other cable company turns out that they're not that great either, but they don't want to go back to the first one. But it turns
Right.
out the first one says, we'll give you X amount of this and that for only this much money, and we'll give you this free gift too. And they're like,
Hmm.
well, but
Right.
you don't get that from Google. Now, here's the weird thing about it. You probably wouldn't get it from Samsung either. But the difference is that Samsung sells so many devices that the amount of people that have a bad experience, whether hardware or software or customer service, it's the percentage is much smaller because there's so many more people that are going
Samsung
through
does
it.
a big. Samsung's big though on giving stuff away. Like here recently,
Yeah,
within the
that's what I'm
last month,
saying. You know?
they issued another sale for the S24 Ultra. If you got the Ultra, you got a set of their Galaxy Bud Pro for free. Their earbuds free.
Yeah, and that's
That's a
excellent
two
because
hundred
I've
dollar device that you
well,
get for free.
in the States, it's a $66,000 in Canada. Uh, tiny little bit
I was
exaggerated.
just saying,
But
but they do a good job with
yeah.
enticing people to come over. So
Well, you know what? That's the thing. And Google needs to work on their marketing. They make some really interesting commercials lately. Lately they have, but I think when it comes to the Pixel 9, they need to step it up because here's the thing: if they lose 30% of the people, which is by the way the number they're projected to lose when the Pixel 9 comes out, that's 33% are saying I don't want it anymore. So they're not going to buy a Pixel 9. That's that's an insanely high number for any
yeah,
company, especially if you're only at 4.5% worldwide and
yeah,
only 2.5% in the US or whatever the number is. I think it might be up slightly from that, or maybe it's lower in the US. I can't remember.
yeah.
It's
I
pretty
don't know
high in
what the
Japan.
numbers
It's
are.
doing really good in Japan.
Yeah,
And it's doing pretty good in Canada. I've seen a lot of people with Pixels lately. But the truth of the matter is, some people, especially people who are Pixel fanboys like me, are online and they're blathering on, well, you know what you're talking about. Everybody loves Pixel. I see them all over the place, and everybody's talking about it. There's a couple of bad apples, and they make the biggest news. And now there's a guy at Android Authority that says nobody likes it anymore, so it must be true. Well, no, he's talking about his experience, three other people he knows, and basically everybody, and he's saying he can't rightfully recommend it based on his experience. There's nothing wrong with that. It's
right.
the same thing as, would you recommend a Pixel to somebody right now after what you went through? I doubt it. I mean, I know you. You wouldn't tell them, no, don't buy it. You would tell them, you need to go check it out, but beware. Here's my experience. And that's what I would do too.
Yeah, yeah. And
So,
I've been very happy with the S23. Matter of fact, this is the first phone, and again, I can't remember when that I haven't upgraded when the new model came out. I'll get
yeah,
the
but
S. I'm going to get the
in all
S25, but
fairness, it's
this has
because
been a great
not only
phone.
did you not need it, but you also were like, oh my God, $60 billion for the other phone and this one works. I
Yeah,
don't
but
blame you.
I could have got $700 or $800 trade on this phone, so it wouldn't have been that much.
Oh, well, then if you don't mind my saying, you're a ding dong. You should have done it.
No, I thought, you know what, this phone has been
But you
fantastic,
know
and I
what? I'll be
just
honest with you. They're saying the same thing about the S24 that a lot of people have said that are saying about the Pixel 9 coming up this year. Is it's an incremental change, and the big change is going to be the year after. And I
yeah,
completely agree with that because this is the first year we're doing the AI thing, and we're in baby jeans right now.
yeah,
They don't fit right. I
yeah,
love it, but you can see why next year's phone is going to be better for Pixel,
yeah.
but it's not going to be a game changer better. Pixel 10 is the one when they have their own chip made by was it TSMC? I think I said that
Yeah,
acronym
something like
right.
that. Yeah.
It's going to be phenomenally better, because now we're basically talking about the same process made the same, pretty much for the same thing that the main chip makers or providers are offering.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, and it might even be a little bit less expensive, because Samsung is a huge chip maker, a huge everything maker. What do they not
Yeah.
make? But they're still a little more expensive, because despite the fact that they're like the second or third biggest chip maker, something like that, I think second maybe. It's literally a drop in the bucket compared to TSMC. Like, it's like they make chips for everything. So
Yeah.
and that's who manufactures Apple's chips. That's who
And it makes you
manufactures.
wonder if it's going to affect the Samsung Galaxy, the Samsung Google, what do you call it?
I don't think so, because if you really think about it,
the whole ecosystem that they've
yeah, no, I don't think so,
so,
because it's still a benefit for both companies, and one of the reasons
yeah,
why,
I think so.
if you look up where Samsung has their chips manufactured, just because they one of the biggest chip makers doesn't mean they use their own chip. They don't. The chip that you have is made by TSMC.
Probably.
It is 100%. It's like, and the vast majority. As a matter of fact, this year all of them were. They didn't do any of their I forgot what their in-house chip is called. I don't mean the actual chip. It's like their manufacturing process, but the name of the chip that they make.
Samsung?
Beyond that, yes. I can't remember. They used to use it on some of their phones.
Is it it's EXO,
something along that line?
Yeah, Xenix, or
no, not quite.
Is that the one that they have that you can get in like European countries? Some of them were getting.
Yeah, but not this. That's what I'm saying. The S23 didn't. They skipped it, and they just went with Snapdragons. So
no, that's not true. There's some European countries that still have the other
not
chip.
the S23.
Yes, there is.
Well, that's not what I heard. So I guess we're gonna argue until we find out that I'm wrong, because I have been.
I remember seeing an article, because I thought the same thing, but I remember seeing an article where they said there were still some countries that had that option.
We're gonna do this live on air then. Does the Samsung S23 Ultra use? Oh my God, I forgot how to, because I don't remember the name of the chip. I can't ask it. I have to ask it differently.
Let me try again. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Does the Samsung S23 Ultra only use? I forgot the name of it now. The one that everywhere else uses, not Europe. Snapdragon, sorry. Only use. This is gonna look good.
EXYNOS.
Okay, wait, hang on. Okay, does the Samsung S23 Ultra only use Snapdragon processors? Okay, that took longer than it used to. Yes, it says
the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra exclusively uses the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy processor. This processor is known for its powerful performance.
Okay, never mind that part.
Especially when it comes to AI.
Does it use a different processor in Europe or anywhere else in the world?
No, unlike previous Galaxy S models, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra uses the same Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor globally. This marks.
Well, that means for the first time in 3 weeks, I'm right about something.
Yeah, that's not.
I can start a winning streak now.
I read a contradicting article to that.
Well, the contradicting article is wrong, because I remember before it even came out that they stated specifically this is the first year in however many long years it was since the S2 or something along that line that you were only going to get one processor worldwide.
Yeah, I remember reading that. But I'm saying that shortly after, I remember reading something. They said, "Oh no, there's still going to be." I forget what it.
Yeah, no, I get it, but let's not even go there, because obviously they were wrong. They were probably just guessing and assuming. but they had very good reason, and that very good reason is because people had been complaining for a long time, and they were. See, you remember why they switched to Snapdragon in the first place? Not Tizen, that's their operating system. I can't remember. You just said it a minute ago, but anyways, they had mentioned a long time ago, so many years back, where they at one point only had the other one, but they had radio problems, and then when they switched to LTE, the LTEs did not work on LTE frequencies in North America, or at least not properly, or maybe not even at all. So they had no choice.
Well, that's not to mention the efficiency status. I mean, the Snapdragon.
Well, yeah, that's a totally different thing. They were basically making a really garbage chip at the time, which was capable of being considerably faster at the time, but had no efficiency. So basically, it really didn't do much of anything properly. So once they said, okay, well, in North America, we have no choice. We have to use Snapdragon. So they went with Snapdragon, but they didn't want to stay with it. So in Europe, they tried to keep going that way. Finally, they got to the point where they realized that since everyone's basically using the same 5G technology worldwide, it makes no sense whatsoever to use the other one. It's too.
That made sense to me. Yeah. That's why I was surprised when I read that. I don't remember what article it was. I kind of just like looked at it, I was like, oh, that's kind of dumb. And I just moved on because I'm like, whatever.
Right.
But yeah. So obviously they were wrong.
Yeah. So they put the Snapdragon in and so on and so on. Bob's your uncle. So basically the bottom line is they don't even manufacture their own chips. So why should Google be using theirs?
Yeah.
No offense, Samsung. You do good, but keep your chips for something else. They don't belong in phones. I'm sorry. They're just not good enough. And again, I love my Pixel. I don't really have a lot of problems with it. I used to have none. But it doesn't have anywhere near the power. And I could use the whole same argument that other Pixel fanboys uses. It doesn't need the power because it's got the AI. But the AI takes power.
Of course it does.
It's like saying, well, why? Because when digital cameras first came out, why does a digital camera take more power than this one? This mechanical thing, and it has to move stuff. This doesn't have to move anything. Well, it's because you don't understand how electricity works.
Right.
Sorry. When you're using digital, it's 100% electricity. 100%. Every single bit and byte is electricity. So that's the only way it's going to work. So that's why digital takes way more power than anything mechanical. That can do the same job is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why technically a car that's electric, it takes a lot more power to get that car to do everything it does just to get it to move those wheels. And then
that's why
mechanical
it still has
power
a 12
after
volt
that.
battery.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So it takes a lot to do all that. Well, no, not all of them do. Tesla doesn't have a 12-volt battery, does it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it does.
Oh, does it? Okay, see, I went back to being wrong already. I had a
I
1 minute
I'm not 100%
streak
of that. I just know, like, for example, my plug-in hybrid, my wife's plug-in hybrid.
But that's a hybrid. Of course it has a
It doesn't matter. There's when you hit the button or turn it on, there's no engine running. There's no starter to turn.
Yeah, but there has to be, because if it's a hybrid, that means you have to be able to use the engine.
But the 12 volt is what operates the door locks, all the
of course, but
instrumentation
also if your hybrid batteries failed for any reason, your gas engine would still be capable of moving you. Am I correct?
No.
What do you mean no? Your gas engine can't move you at all?
No, the systems are so intertwined. If one fails, the whole thing stops.
Wow, they make them totally different than they used to. The first hybrids that were actually meant to do that. So you could actually, like when you accelerate hard, it used to be that it was the mechanical engine that did it. But I guess that makes no sense because that's where you use the most gas. It's much better to use the torque from a battery operated,
it's combined. But like my battery went dead in my plug-in Fusion, and I was locked out of my car. I mean, they give you a way to get in, but
I would hope
12 volt
so.
battery's dead. Even though I had lithium ion power, I had no 12 volt power, and I had no door locks, no interior lights. None of that worked.
For the first 2 months I had my car, because I'd never had a car with electric locks that you don't need to use the key. It's got a push button on the outside. First time I had a car like that. Mm-hmm. It's also the first time I had a backup camera in a car that I didn't have to install myself. So I was excited when I got it. And 2 months after that, I remember saying, well, what the hell am I supposed to do if the battery on this fob dies? And the guy said, well, just push that little button. I said, what are you doing? He said, just push. I said, it's part of the fob. He said, push it. Key pops out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a
I
the key I have is like a special,
felt like an idiot.
skeleton kind of key. It's kind of weird and has like a little slot. You pull this cap off the door handle, and yeah.
Well, that's the thing is in reality, it depends on the vehicle. Now, I think I would not want to drive anything that didn't have a fob that actually had a key available to actually use it to get in. Even if it's not an electric vehicle, I still, in order to get in my car, if I lose the key, I can't get in the car. Right. So that's basically impossible. I could theoretically leave the fob and the key separate. So if I lost the fob, the key is still on a keychain in my pocket. Right. Theoretically. I'm not gonna, but
Yeah.
All right. We went way too far on that. So, I mean, we're going to end up not being able to talk about our main thing. So I will bring this up because we were talking about the whole TikTok thing, and I brought that up briefly today. Don't let your kids use TikTok. I'm serious. And it's not that, I'm not even talking about the Chinese factor here. Okay. About China. I don't mean Chinese as a race. I mean China as in the communist government. Anywho, from CP24 News here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, 5 more Ontario school boards, not schools, school boards, joined lawsuit against social media platforms. So it says here 5 additional Ontario school boards and 2 independent private schools have joined a lawsuit against the owners of multiple social media platforms, including Snapchat, TikTok, and Facebook. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In a news release issued Wednesday, advocacy group Schools for Social Media Change confirmed that the lawsuit, which was first launched by 4 Ontario school boards back in March, now includes the different, I won't bother reading all those, obviously, all the way through Ottawa, blah, 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 blah. But it does mention a lot of them being Christian school boards and a couple of independent private Christian schools. But it turns out that's not what it's about. It says in March, blah, 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 blah. In March, this Toronto District School Board, the Peel District School Board, and so on and so on, had launched suit seeking $4.5 billion in damages against the owners of the social media platforms for creating products that they alleged negligently interfere with student learning and have caused widespread disruption to the education system. Now, I can tell you there's very little chance that they will win that.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, they might get a couple of them to branch off independently in some form of much less expensive deal. But that's highly unlikely unless that deal includes having different parental controls automatically baked in. They'd probably ignore it unless Toronto school boards, Ontario school boards rather, could get other school boards in Canada to follow suit and maybe even try to convince a few American school boards to get involved and maybe the government to actually not back it because they can't back it being a lawsuit, but to put their stamp on that changes need to be made. Because here's the thing, while there's no way they're going to win, I completely understand where they're coming from, because just look on any social media platform, even on YouTube, on the shorts, which are basically the new TikTok. And it's true, it's becoming extremely popular lately. What you're seeing is kids acting like, well, I don't want to say because they're kids, but they're acting like they don't know anything, and they don't seem to have any other care in the world other than how to make more TikTok videos. And people were worried when kids were doing a lot of this selfie stuff. Well, now it's not selfies anymore. It's get in front of the camera and at all cost. But what I hate is you put on YouTube. I don't do TikTok again, like I said, but YouTube Shorts or whatever the Facebook calls their version of it. Reels, I think, or something like that. I can't remember. And sometimes they pop up where it's not an adult doing something ridiculous or funny. It's kids doing stuff. And I'm thinking, wait a minute now, you're putting yourself out there way too much, right? You're a child and you're doing these, what I would have to assume, at least some of the time, are unsupervised little things in your house, sometimes in front of your house. And you're thinking, okay, wait a minute now. There's too much crap out there. I don't even want to say what that crap is, but we all know that you should be allowing your kids to do these types of videos. If they want to have a YouTube channel, monitor the heck out of it. Make sure that they can only do certain things, and make sure that they adhere by YouTube's rules as it being a child done by children, made for children, as supervised by adult. You technically have to be adult to do it, but you know what I mean, right? And I think that's what they should do. I think these quick shorts that they're doing, I think it's ridiculous. But it's also taking away, and this is the big thing. That's totally another thing. But I think it's taking away from their ability to learn anything, because they think they're learning from each other. Kids are spending most of the time believing that they're learning only from each other and older teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that my thoughts on it are probably not going to be real popular, but it's not the school's responsibility to police that. It's the parents' responsibility.
I 100% agree.
Now,
I just said
that. I think the school can implement something that says, you know what, when you come into class, you can't bring your phone or something like that. But
yeah,
you can't. I mean, the school board has no right to tell these social media companies that they're interfering with schooling, because it's not them that's causing the problem. It's too much unsupervised use of, like, I have family members and friends with kids that are in school that are in teen years, and they're highly restricted. They can't just do whatever they want to do on social media because the parent says, no, you can't do that. I mean, when you get to be 18, you go buy your own phone, and then, okay, do what you want to do.
Right.
Which
yeah.
I'm sure obviously it starts before 18, but you get my point.
Yeah.
It's really a parental issue. I'll be honest with you. I'm glad I'm an empty nester and all my kids are out of the house and I don't have to deal with a lot of stuff, because I would be a very unpopular person in my household. I would be very unpopular. And it's a tough world, man, out there when you're dealing with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't envy educators. I have family members that are educators, and I see what they go through.
I. Yeah.
They are put through the ringer, and students feel like they can do and say whatever they want to a teacher, and it's wrong. But it's not the social media companies that's creating that problem. So
what? I don't disagree with you, especially considering all of them actually do have rules about what age you have to be to do content. And they get around it by just having somebody older do it, or they just lie.
Right.
They just lie. And then when they get on there, and here's the thing, there are YouTubers who are getting strikes and even having their channels banned for misunderstandings about things that they didn't say, or somebody putting a strike against them because they don't like them or something like that, right? A complaint. But yet there's 9-year-olds with their own YouTube channels. That's totally against YouTube's rules. You're not allowed to, but yet it's happening.
And there's some parents who are like, "Oh yeah, I'll sign you up. Yeah, sure, no problem."
Of course. And they're like, "Oh, my kid's gonna have a great bright future." And you're probably right. But here's the thing. Again, if your kid is making muffins and showing the world how a 9-year-old can learn how to do things like this, or or something funny, maybe you got an 11-year-old that's really good at basketball and saying, "Let me show you how to shoot hoops." If you're new to basketball, or something like that, that makes sense. You go to the park with your kid. Sure, it goes right, whatever. That's all good. But when you just basically say, okay, you're 9 years old, you can have a phone, and they go in their room and they lock the door, and then they're doing these weird TikTok dances with the shirt that comes to here and the pants that are only here. It doesn't make sense to me. There's no reason for that. I'm sorry. And yes, I do think that the social media platforms should be more proactive in making sure that this is toned down significantly. The school boards, however, aren't saying that that's an issue. Where they're talking about is they believe that the social media platforms are contributing, forgive me for saying this, but for the stupidness that's becoming childhood in recent years. And I don't totally disagree with it, but I have no choice. I have to agree with what you're saying. I'd love to do a point counterpoint here, but your point is very good. It starts and should end at parenting. Enough said. Regardless of what anyone else does or doesn't do, whatever company does or doesn't do, whatever the school board does or doesn't do, whatever the teacher does or doesn't do, the parent is where it should start, and where it comes back to again is the parent. Should the kids be able to do this? The answer is technically no, not unsupervised, not inappropriate stuff, and also not be allowed to just watch YouTube and go, I don't really think that the teacher was right. I think this is correct and that's wrong, and here's why. I saw it on TikTok.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the only thing I have to say is they just need to go home and play their Atari. You see what I did there, right?
I do see what you did there. That is our last little bit. Oh, we're at a good time.
Yeah, that's why I pulled that.
Yeah,
Does
Atari.
anybody know that Atari still even exists? But guess what? They do.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Who knew Intellivision still existed? Intellivision.
Yeah.
Atari. And I've seen this in a lot of places, but I'm going to cite this from Mashable because that's where I'm reading it. Atari buys Intellivision, ending the oldest video game console war. Can we really call it the oldest video game console war when it ended the minute PlayStation came out?
Yeah.
Please.
And I like what they put under the heading. Yes, this is a real headline from 2024.
That's beautiful.
It's like, what?
We could get into the details in it, but I suggest you Google it if it interests you at all. If it doesn't, who cares? Other than that, I'm going to say my goodbyes on my end. I don't know how much longer my light's going to last. I forgot to charge the batteries. So from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, we hope you have a wonderful, great week. There should be some really good news coming out in the next few weeks all around. We're going to have new betas coming in from Apple, Samsung, Google, a whole bit, most likely. Windows, I think, should have some betas or new, not even betas. We might have a new major update soon. I'm not sure.
It's been spinning the wheels.
We've been waiting on that one. Yeah, we've been
12,
waiting on that one.
We'll see.
But we'll see what happens. They may not even call it 12. They may just decide it's a 0.1 upgrade.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we'll get into that. So from Toronto, I'm Lionel, and we'll see you next week.
Robert from Nashville, and we'll catch you next episode. See you later.